Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. This week's top stories in swimming. I'm Coleman Hodges coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got editor-in-chief Braden Keith in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we've got associate editor Tori Hart coming to us from beautiful downtown Oakland, California.
Coleman, I can see your New Mexico art behind you, but what are you doing in New Mexico? Are there even pools in New Mexico?
There might be a total of 3 pools in the state of New Mexico. This week, I'm babysitting my brother's cat while he's out of town. But next week, I will be back in New York City, my temporary residence, where I will be planning some exclusive practice and pancakes. We're getting back on the road. We're getting back out there, and we are starting to film practices again because things are kind of back to normal. I don't know if we're allowed to say that or not, but I'm getting back out on the road. We're getting pancakes soon. So, hey guys, you want to talk about some news?
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. First of all, I think this week's top story, which kind of got overshadowed, but then kind of overshadowed everything else. It came out at a weird time. 3-time NCAA champion Shaine Casas reveals his plans to go pro. We knew he was transferring out of Texas A&M. We thought he might be joining Eddie Reese and the Longhorns in the NCAA. It looks like he is working on getting down to Austin with Eddie, but he will be coming to the pro group. Do we think that this plan for Shaine to go pro after 3 NCAA seasons will pan out for him?
I know people get mad about this, especially with NIL name, image, likeness improvements that, you got to get the college education. We just have to accept that the traditional 4-year college path isn't right for everybody, student athlete or not. It's not the right answer for everybody. The bigger question is, does he have the juice to build a real pro career? And we kind of know he has the talent. And he's had this sort of possibility, this tease of talent, but we haven't really seen him do the things yet that are going to get him that money that he needs to have a real pro swimming career. So it's, I don't know. I think it's a good move. I think Austin will be a good place for him. I think he's the kind of guy that needs some other big dogs in the room training with him, and he'll get that at Texas. So we'll see what happens, but he's still got to do something to make that money.
Yeah, I think what's so fascinating about this is because of the new NIL deals, this isn't a situation like maybe we were seeing, 4 or 5 years ago where swimmers are turning pro mid-college because they want to cash in on their student deals because they just can't, leave behind that earning potential anymore. Like, he definitely could have been earning the same sorts of deals had he stayed in college. And, I don't know, Shaine, I'm not privy to what's going on in his mind, but to me, it feels more like, he was kind of over the college scene, not of the utmost importance to him that he finishes out his degree there and just chose to focus on his swimming. But it definitely, like you said, Braden, is no longer a case of, does he have enough to kind of pick up those middling NIL deals that we'd seen before? Now it's about really making an entire career.
I mean, does this has got to be like a plan B, right? Just based on the timing, because when this first came out, when he entered the transfer portal, it was clear that his intent was to swim for the varsity team at Texas. But now he's gone pro. So there's something that's changed, I think, in that time period. And hopefully we'll get Shaine on the podcast in the next few weeks and we can kind of talk to him. But when we talked to him about this, it sounded like an evolving situation. So we don't know if he couldn't get enough credits to transfer, although the 2 schools being in state makes that seem unlikely. It's usually a pretty easy transfer of credits there. But I'd love to know what changed from when he wanted to be on the varsity team to when he decided to just join the pro group.
I think also I was actually thinking about this morning. The fact that there's only 3 years until the next Olympics is nice for him, I think, because I think my initial thought was, he's not an Olympian. He doesn't really have the star power to kind of get himself supported with just sponsorship deals. But obviously now we've got the ISL, then it's a shorter training cycle before he could potentially become a huge star at the Olympic level. So maybe that factored in as well.
I also think, one thing people were mentioning in the comments was that, well, how much money can someone like him really make who doesn't have this big pro resume or doesn't have this huge presence. But if he wants to build a presence like that, I feel like it's almost better to do it if he went to World Cups, if he did ISL. We know he can perform in season. He's done it in the NCAA. He's great at short course. He's really good at long course too, but it's like, we know he could throw down ISL winning times or World Cup winning times in season. And maybe that's a way that he could build up his pro career as well.
Well, the winningest swimmer in the ISL regular season, this article just went live, is Beta Nelson, who also doesn't have that big resume. And, maybe she's never going to get the $1 million a year tier deal like a Katie Ledecky gets, but she can make a dang good living for never having made an Olympic team, never made a long course worlds team. So this is this whole ISL sort of thing that's reshaping all of these conversations. I bet Shaine wishes he had made this decision in time to be in the ISL this year. But in the future, if the ISL survives, there's some money for a swimmer like him to be made, at least as much as the value of a college scholarship.
So moving on, speaking of the ISL, we saw the regular season come to an end. Not really any surprises there, especially with the content we've been putting out about how Aqua is pretty much a shoe-in for that number 6 spot of the playoff locks, which they got. We now have the first ever ISL play-in match with Iron, Tokyo, DC Trident, and the New York Breakers. Do we think there will be any surprise or shakeup in this play-in match, or does it look like Iron and Tokyo are pretty much locked in?
Oh, yeah, I don't think Iron and Tokyo are locked in at all, Coleman. Go ahead, Tori.
I was just going to say, the only thing I feel like is that the lock is not the Breakers. And then from there, we've got a little bit more room to play around.
I agree with that. I'd like to see if Katinka shows up for Iron, because she's been at the meets. She's been cited all over the venue, and she's not Katinka of 3 years ago where she'd come in and just be an instant difference maker. But emotionally, that could be a huge impact. I think people are overlooking DC. I think people are really overlooking DC, including you, Coleman, because they weren't given the chance in that match 10, which, we could quibble over whether that was intentional or not, but seemed to be the league trying to put together the 4 teams that they thought had the best chance of taking that 6th spot. Which created some excitement. That was cool. But, they had a really tough meet, but they've been swimming really well. Ryan Hoffer keeps getting better. If they put in a little drop taper over the next couple of days, I think right now I'd take Iron and DC.
I agree that DC, that outside of New York, it's any of those 2 of the 3 teams. I think DC has looked really good lately, and I will be really excited to see DC face off among some more maybe evenly matched teams, because I don't think we really saw this. They kind of missed out on that match 10, where it was kind of like you said, Braden, those 4 teams that kind of had that shot of getting the number 6 spot.
So I'm curious to see also just who shows up. And like you said, Braden maybe puts in a little taper just for this true like winner go home format here for the bottom 2 teams. And curious just to see the kind of value that swimmers or teams as a whole are putting on this play-in match.
Well, there's a lot of money to be made in this match. I mean, none of these teams in the play-in are going to make the final. That's sort of a given, but this is, if you're New York Breakers, you're going full taper for this, right? Because this is your last chance to earn money. And for the other teams, you still have another month before the playoffs. I'd be going all in on this, if only for the money, because this is going to be your last best chance to pick up big money.
So we're going to get to some other ISL topics later in Sink or Swim. But moving on from the NCAA, or back to the NCAA rather, NC State's Noe Ponti, the Olympic bronze medalist in the 100-meter fly, announced that he was leaving NC State, going back home to Switzerland to train. He wrote a pretty eloquent post, in my opinion. He said essentially after the Olympics, his life had completely changed. He had gotten fatigued and basically rushed into college, and now he's going back home to kind of recuperate, settle in, and see what his next move is. Does this seem like a good move for
Coleman, you blew the segue here. Noe Ponti was drafted by the Tokyo Frog Kings, who are in the play-in match. So infamously now with Dave Salo and ISL management bickering on air over whether he gets that draft pick back or not. And we don't think he's eligible, although with the ISL, you never know how the rules could change. But, I think I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. It kind of does happen though, right? Like we have frequently international recruits who commit to a college. It's public. We do the article, they post on their Instagrams, and then they never show up. And he did show up, but then he turned around and left. And I thought it was really interesting how he said basically, he didn't, this was his first sort of taste of this level of fame and fortune in his home country. And he didn't really have a chance to like take a breath and figure out what that means. And then moving across an ocean to a new culture and a new country and a whole new training scheme and a whole new competition system. I mean, that's a lot. I still think there's a chance he goes home, takes a breath, gets through the holidays and winds up back in North Carolina, maybe in January. He's probably at an age where if it gets to next fall, maybe he would just let the NCAA thing go because he'd be 21 by next season. But good for him for taking that time. I think in the US, we have this sort of perceived pressure that you have to do things on a certain timeline because we're so sort of regimented by this system and this academic schedule and the NCAA schedule. Our swimming seasons sort of fit together so perfectly. There's not a lot of flexibility in there. But to me, there's no reason for him to push this if it's not the right time. There's no reason for him to not come back in January or come at all if he doesn't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Colin said, I mean, his post really summed it up well. I thought it was very mature and just, well spoken from him. But I mean, swimmers at all levels are exhausted coming back from the Olympics, let alone one starting another exhausting endeavor, which is, freshman year of college. And if, he felt like it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. And I think that's a noble move to just kind of call it there and not make anything worse in the process. And like you said, Braden, he's a little bit older than the typical American college freshman would be. So, curious whether he does come back and give it another go. You could almost see some parallels to maybe Hugo Gonzalez, who we'll talk about later, who kind of did a year, took some time off, swam for his international team or national team, I believe, and then ended up back in the NCAA and is now, full-fledged, fully back here. But, it wasn't smooth sailing the whole way.
Tori, what percentage of your classes did you skip the first semester of your freshman year of college?
Well, I'm a nerd, so no.
Oh, God, you're a nerd. I think I went to maybe like half of them. And that was like, I was an hour and a half from home. I was just kind of like doing the normal path. I can't imagine so we have a writer, right? Annie Johnson, who Tori, well, Coleman, from trials. She's great. We love her. She's in Spain right now studying abroad. The last thing she wants to do is her SwimSwam work. She wants to go see Spain. She wants to meet new people. And I can't imagine trying to go to a new country as an Olympic medalist, all this excitement in your life. You can be king of the town at home. You can probably be king of the town in Raleigh, North Carolina too, as long as you carry your medal around, and then having to focus on class and all of these other things. I would need 6 months to kind of ride that wave and screw around and stay out till 2 a.m. without any real serious consequences before I think I was ready to go to class at 8 a.m., get up for 6 a.m. practice, do all those things.
Yeah, I think we continue the conversation during this Olympics a lot, but just kind of the come down of an Olympic Games, it's such a huge endeavor. And talking to a lot of the Australians who had to quarantine for 2 weeks directly coming off of Tokyo, they were kind of like, yeah, it's not ideal, but also it gives you time to sit with yourself and just kind of process everything that happened. And then they can get all the media out of the way and do podcasts with us and, do all their interviews on Zoom. And then they can actually go home and take a break and it seemed like a kind of a good system. So I'm guessing instead of having that going straight home for maybe a week or two and then packing up your whole life and going across to a different continent gave you less time to reflect and sit with it and process.
Coleman seems like the kind of guy who skipped a lot of class.
I skipped a few. I mean, freshman year though, like I can't imagine having swimming though. Like I didn't swim in college, and yeah, like I was out till 2 a.m. like most nights, right? Just because it's like, whoa, I can do this. Like I can go get food at 1 a.m. whenever I want.
I can go get a different haircut every week.
Exactly. Like, it's like that. I think that's an important part of going out of your home and kind of, spreading your wings for the first time. And yeah, if you have to focus on school and a new training system, that's a lot. I do want to ask though, from an NC State perspective, how is this going to affect the men's teams, run at a top 3 finish, at perhaps crack in the top 2 and maybe an NCAA title if Ponti doesn't come back this spring and maybe ultimately doesn't come back, period. Because it's like with that freshman class and what they've already built, they were looking pretty studly.
They're good. They're very good. I don't think this is going to hurt their momentum at all. They kind of think Stanford 2014 or Virginia 2019. They've got that sort of boundless momentum going with this freshman class coming in. So I don't think it's going to really hurt that a lot. But to win NCAA titles, you need a lot of these guys who are placing top 2 or 3 at NCAAs in multiple events, because we look at how good NC State has been for so many years, and they've still never really been in contention for an NCAA title. And that just shows you how Texas and Cal not only have the Ryan Hoffers and the Drew Kiblers and those guys, but they've got 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 of those guys. So I don't know. I'm sure it frees up some money, and right now they seem to be able to get the men's recruits that they want to get for the most part. So maybe they'll repurpose the money in such a way that it won't hurt as bad. But I think in the short term, it's hard to see them catching up with Cal and Texas until they get another class in. I think they need another class and delay it. And someone else big with that money, someone like Aiden Hayes, like they did last year. They need a couple more of those, whereas I think Noe Ponti was going to be a little bit of a shortcut for them.
That being said, I think there's also no guarantee that a potentially unhappy, exhausted, homesick swimmer is adding to the team what we would project him to. So you never know with that sort of thing.
You know what I liked? I liked that all of his teammates, if we can read between the lines a little bit here, all of his teammates, I didn't check everybody's Instagram, but everyone that I saw was positive, was supportive of this. We don't always see this when swimmers leave teams. We see it in the comments all the time. I hate to break it to you, but a lot of those nasty comments about swimmers leaving teams are from their former teammates. And then they wonder why that person would have left. But NC State swimmers have at least publicly been very supportive. I wonder if that says they think he might come back, if they're trying to remind him that they can provide a family, they can provide support for him that he wouldn't have necessarily at all programs, by kind of showing him some love, even though he's leaving.
So I guess we'll see how this plays out as time goes on. I would sure love to see him in the NCAA again. But speaking of family and national significance, the Chinese national games were last week, and a lot of our commenters, or at least some of our commenters, were like, "Why are they going so fast at these like in season in country meets?" And then other commenters would reply and be like, "Dude, this is like their NCAAs, or like this is like the biggest meet for them besides the Olympics." It's like it's a huge thing. It holds a lot of national significance and weight, especially between provinces. And we saw 3 national records go down, including both the men's and the women's 50 freestyles, and then the women's 200 free. What do you guys think of China swimming so fast, times that would have medaled in Tokyo at their, home Chinese nationals?
I think the NCAA comparison is a great one. And people, people in America think and in Europe and a lot of the world think that the Olympics are the be all end all. But what you hear from people in China is that there's more pressure on like the Asian games because of the geopolitics of establishing regional dominance in every sphere. And so these events mean a lot. You know, I always fight people when they say politics and sports don't go together, because politics and sports have always been inextricably intertwined. But China is sort of the ultimate degree of it, where it's showing up at these meets and swimming fast is the shortest route to, you know, I know the stuff that goes along with Sun Yang and the doping, but like to that status in China, that's how you get there, by showing up at these meets and swimming fast. In Olympic gold medals do it too, but China Games gold medals are a lot easier to win and can make you real famous real quick.
I do think one thing that's interesting to note about the Chinese national games is, I think for swimming is actually one of the sports I think where it's slightly less of a big deal. So sports like weightlifting and table tennis, where China's limited in the number of people they can bring to the Olympics, but incredibly dominant in those sports. The China Games are huge because it's the best of the best of the best of the best of the best country in the world competing in one place. Like, you've got everyone who couldn't go to the Olympics because of size limits competing. So huge deal in those sports. And in swimming, I feel like we're just seeing kind of the tip of the iceberg, and it's still a big deal, if that gives you any sense of the importance of the games in general.
Doesn't it feel like we're constantly on the verge with China of it feels like they just haven't put that meet together at the Olympics. But we're just like teetering on the edge now that they're figuring out sprinting, which has been sort of a challenge for the Asian continent in general for a while. But if they're having men go 21.6s in the 50 frees at national meets, I think this US-Australia thing is about to become a 3-team race at the top pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could see it. Like Tori said, it's like all those swimmers that didn't make the China's Olympic team. It's like they got to put on display what they could do, you know, similar to like the national meet that we have after a lot of the Olympics. The people, obviously we had a lot of prior Olympians or people who would have medaled not make it on our team. And so it seems like a really cool thing to have. And I think just culturally, there's such a barrier between the US and China that like probably a lot of our US swim fans just don't know how China does things, especially Chinese swimming, like what is popular there. So it's cool to see.
Can you imagine the roasting the US coaches would get if they only entered one woman in the 100 breaststroke at the Olympics, and then they had a woman show up a month and a half later at a national meet and go 105.6 in that event? I mean, that would just be like a skewering to end all skewerings.
And it's like, what do they think of it there? Like I think it's just a shame that we don't know more about just culturally how they move through things and how they handle things. Cause it'd be great to talk to some of their coaches and just be like, so did you get skewered? Or was that like, oh no, it's okay. That was a really cool thing to watch as the week continued. Now it is time to play our favorite game on the SwimSwam Breakdown, Sink or Swim. Braden, you brought up Sun Yang and the whole doping thing. We've heavily reported. Another doping story that has just come up is that Shayna Jack has officially cleared. And in the comments on the article we just put out about how her coach, Dean Boxall, mentioned that she wanted revenge, a lot of commenters were saying, well, it doesn't even matter because she's already doped. So any success she has, it's going to be tainted. Does serving a ban and then coming back and winning medals taint those medals? Sink or swim?
Oh, swim. Absolutely. First of all, Coleman, your comment in response to that didn't make any sense. Our commenters are correct. I have no idea what you were trying to say there. But how could it not taint it? This is the ongoing debate in swimming. Are all doping offenses the same? Should it be zero tolerance? Is there room for nuance? At the end of all of those kind of trails of thought, I think there's there's a taint. There's got to be a pall over it, and it doesn't have to be there for everybody. Some people love Shayna Jack still and won't see it, but for some percentage of the audience that's not going to take the time to think through that nuance, it's going to be a tainted swim, whatever she does.
So I had a similar but slightly, I guess, more nuanced take on this, which is I'm thinking that it should taint or does actually in reality taint their performances going forward. I think no. I mean, if she's clean now, she's clean now. I totally agree with you, though, that from the perspective of the average media consumer, it absolutely, for life has tainted her name. Every time we talk about Sun-Yang, Shayna Jack, all those types, people are immediately going to go to their doping scandals, or, for Sun-Yang, not doping, but related scandals. And
so you don't buy the long-term benefit of doping? You think she served her too? We don't know if she did it on purpose. She says she didn't, but you don't know.
I think I think there's two different things. So in swimming, I think we have the luxury of having results that aren't continuous over career. We don't really care about her long-term career stats. Whereas like in baseball, Barry Bonds' home run record that was tainted by him doping, that's always tainted because we care about his career-long stats where he doped throughout or for a period of time. Where Shayna Jack, in theory, if the doping system or the anti-doping system is working correctly now, we can take these results as a new era of her career, I suppose, in theory. I totally get where you're coming from, though, that the name is always associated. But I think I've also been on the record before, sort of like a bit of a Sun-Yang apologist as well. And I would say the same thing for him, where, yeah, he had his previous issues. I personally am excited to see what he can do going forward, provided he continues to swim at a top level. And I would take those results for what they are, and maybe I'll eat my words later. But that's my stance on it. If they're clean now and we have any trust in the anti-doping system, we should, take those results at face value now.
I'm with Tori, and that was what I was trying to say in that comment. The commenter I responded to, he was like, "Who cares? She's already doped. It's tainted forever." What I was trying to say in my response is that I think a lot of people care that she served the ban, and now if she wins medals, that will hold significance, tainted or not. But that's all I'm going to say. Moving on. Hand touch at the 100 checkpoint of the 400 free in the ISL. This was an interesting one. Krager Zerk did it. I think someone else did as well. But do we think this is a good strategy, sink or swim?
Swim in this all day long, because it's all about the points and the times don't matter, which I'm so sick of hearing. But the reality is it's true. It's silly in one regard, because like none of these meets are close enough where these little 1 or 2 point pickups mean anything. But I have a dream that one day they will be. And so I am swimming this because I want a meet to come down to a point or two and have this be the difference maker.
Yeah, I swim it as well. I mean, you have to game the system that you're given. And I swim that. I sink the entire concept, though. I think it's super.
Can you tell we both reluctantly swim this?
We
don't sound proud
like
of
a separate middle category, the reluctant swim. It's kind of like the cool down swim. But yeah, I mean, I sink the whole concept, but that's another segment.
That's another sink or swim. Moving on, Mark Schubert announced that he was retiring from Mission Viejo. Do we really think so? Obviously he's going to retire from Mission. He's not going to be a head coach anymore. Is Mark Schubert done coaching? Sink or swim?
Sink that. Mark Schubert has a complicated legacy, and I think he knows he has a complicated legacy, whether he says that publicly or not. And I think he's going to keep pushing, because in his mind, I think that, one more Olympic gold medal, one more this, one more that will turn his legacy to the positive in the long term. And I could see him. He was training Chinese swimmers, which was a point of tension at Mission Viejo already. And I could see him just sort of going full-time training Chinese swimmers. So I sink Mark Schubert being done coaching.
I think it as well. Like, do I think he's going to go, full Eddie Reese and like fully announce a retirement and then fully, in theory, come back as a head coach on deck? No, but I think we see a lot with these coaches hanging around on deck, still contributing. And I find it hard to believe he's really just done.
Yeah, the Eddie Reese principle, no way he's done coaching. Or like, Jack Roach, John Urbanchek, like he that dude's going to be on deck till the day he dies, I think. But moving on, we saw a big NCAA weekend. The Texas men had their orange and white meet. Cal and Cal Poly had king and queen of the pool competitions. So we actually got to see a lot of teams in action for the first time. Did this get you excited for the upcoming NCAA season? Do you feel like it was a legit solid preview of like, oh yeah, NCAA swimming is back, sink or swim?
This is my favorite time of year in sports. It's baseball playoffs. Football is starting. We're getting wound up with hockey and basketball again. College swimming is beginning. We've got 8 contenders for the NCAA title. We've got 14 number 1 recruiting classes. Everybody's got all the confidence in the world. Normally I'm swimming this. It felt a little flat this year. King and queen of the pool, which is a traditional opener, was not close. It wasn't that competitive. I don't know. I feel like we usually get a little more pop out of this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and sink it this year, only relative to its normal sort of boundless energy. But normally I would swim it.
I'm swimming it, and it's for one name only. And I alluded to this earlier. It is Hugo Gonzalez season. SZN, as the kids like to say now. I've been waiting for this guy to pop off for so long. And I know his times weren't really anything to, drop your jaw at, but oh God, I mean, this is maybe just a personal thing, but like, I remember the day, the moment we found out he was headed to Cal, I was so psyched. I live close by. I was ready to go watch him just like dominate. He's 3rd fastest short course 4IMer ever, I believe. Hasn't quite had the seasons we would expect of him, just due to the various circumstances he's faced since coming to the collegiate system. And I am just so ready for him to have that season we've been waiting for. Swimming.
I can't wait for Carson versus Hugo. I think that will be the most exciting 400 IM in history. They've got some parallels. They haven't always swum their best at the biggest meets. They're both kind of looking to stamp their name on a gold medal somewhere. And I think that's going to be absolutely thrilling. I just wish we could have seen that this weekend. Then I would have swum this all day long.
Yeah, I agree with Braden. I have to sink this weekend. We didn't see the pop that we're used to of like really eye popping times. I mean, I feel like Carson Foster 142, 200 IM. I was there in person for that. I was like, ooh, okay, that's a good swim. But and there were some other good swims around the country, but it just didn't have that oomph. Next, leaving an open lane in ISL, we reported that Sydney Pickram now has done this twice throughout the regular season. We don't know why, but as a strategy, do you think it is a viable one to leave an open lane in the ISL, sink or swim?
I am swimming this because the most important thing in the ISL right now is eyeballs, and drama drives eyeballs, and this is drama. So I'm swimming, leaving an open lane because it's a terrible strategy, but I am sinking the league and the team's refusal to acknowledge it, explain it, discuss it. It is such a missed opportunity. This has been the story of the ISL, being so hell-bent on keeping everything smiles and about team points that they pass up these opportunities for drama, for headlines, et cetera, the things that they need to get eyeballs. So I am swimming this strategy. I am sinking the response to it.
Yeah, I don't think I need to elaborate on that much further. It's just like, what the heck all around? Like, I mean, I hope that Sydney is okay. But yeah, I don't think much more needs to be said. It's obviously not like a legit strategy. And like Braden said, the lack of any explanation is perplexing.
Well, so do you think it's a legit strategy if you know that the swimmer you were going to throw in would just get jackpotted or like even negative points?
We don't know because we don't know why they left her out. We don't know if she was hurt. We don't know. Are we comparing to Sydney or are we comparing to the next best swimmer? And again, do 1 or 2 points matter? No, they never really have, but that's not the premise of the league, right? The premise of the league is that the points do matter.
Fair enough. And last on the list, absent from ISL, this guy has been leaving open lanes all season. Adam Peaty, we saw his first debut on the British dancing show. What's it called? Strictly Come Dancing. And he looked good.
He looks like a dancer is what's crazy. Like we saw Ryan Lochte on Dancing with the Stars looking like a swimmer dancing, which I mean, power to him. I couldn't do it, but Adam Peaty looked like a dancer out there.
He looked good. So is he going to be moving on? Will his dancing carry him through the ISL season? Will he ever show up to ISL, or is he going to keep dancing, sink or swim?
If there was ever a swimmer that was going to be good at a dancing competition show, it would be a breaststroker because they've got the hips. They've got the hips. You got to have the hips. I didn't love his dance. I think they should have taken more advantage of his natural skills and shown off his legs a little bit more because he's got huge legs. So a little more kicks in the air, a little, maybe some jumping. But, you know, the judges loved it. There is no way he's going to be back for the playoffs. I think Adam Peaty will win Strictly Come Dancing 2021. Book it. Take that to Vegas. Take that to London. You can bet on anything in the UK. Adam Peaty.
Yeah, I swim him staying on long enough to miss the ISL season, which is just a hilarious coincidence, and I'm very here for it.